often is that when we originally started saying promoting positive atheism, we meant in a positive way. You know, getting out there, talking to people, being friendly, engaging people.
I can respect that. Well, here in front of the audience that we're watching here, I'd just like to know, are y'all personally strong atheists or weak atheists?
I'm a strong atheist.
I consider myself a weakish atheist.
Okay, so perhaps I'll just pose this question to Jay, since he's a weak atheist. You know, I asked previously, what reason do you have God does not exist? If you do have a positive belief that God does not exist, absence of evidence would not be evidence of absence.
Yes, it is. If it should be there. If the evidence should be there, it is evidence of absence.
If the evidence should be there, precisely. So the absence of evidence is only evidence of absence in cases where the entity, in this case God, we should expect to have some evidence.
Right.
Now, evidence itself is, you know, subjective though. So, and we can only say that we don't have it. Well, yeah, precisely it is, because one person could say that I see the universe itself as evidence, and you could say I don't see that at all because I want to see empirical evidence. I want to see God walk on water in front of me.
Well, I'm not asking for that.
Subjective. I know, I'm just getting across the point that it's subjective.
And I disagree with that, because I just gave an example of evidence, how to use evidence to validate a claim.
Oh, did you give that on the previous call, or did you give that on me?
I gave that in the introduction of this show, how to use evidence to validate a claim in the Bible specifically.
Well, I think the Bible is from a historical standpoint, though. So I think there's different, you know, there's different spectrums in terms of historical accuracy and actual.
Did you watch the introduction to the show?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay, well, I actually went through an entire example of how to validate some historical event in the Bible. And I used an example of the fall of Jerusalem and the Babylonian captivity. Okay,
you know, I can't, I'm not going to go ahead and make you go over that, because I'm sure that takes a while.
Yeah.
But, if we go ahead and say evidence is evidence of absence, which I would disagree. But
if it is.
No doubt some people think it is, but if it is, then we have to agree on two things. Number one is that God, if he does exist, has not met his burden of evidence. Number two,
okay, we agree.
We have, well, I think we can go back to that in a second, but number two is that we have, with high probability of a surety, that we have surveyed the whole area in which existence might be probable. And it's clearly that we have not, because it's just in the last 50 years, you know, we've gotten a supposed,
So let me ask you, if we've only, suppose, for instance, that we had only surveyed, let's say, let's keep it modest, let's say Los Angeles. Let's say we have done a thorough search of God for, we have done a thorough search for God in Los Angeles and nowhere else, and we find not a trace of him. Would the explanation for that be that actually God is present everywhere except Los Angeles? I mean, the notion that God is sort of omnipresent kind of goes hand in hand with the idea that you have to have some kind of ongoing indication of his presence in any particular place.
Well, here's two things, though.
And I mean, given that our knowledge is limited to the earth, especially since Christians tend to claim that the earth is of special interest to God, it would be kind of odd to try to make the case that, well, we haven't found any evidence of God here on earth, but maybe he's just everywhere in the rest of the universe, and kind of, you know, there's a godless bubble around Earth somewhere.
Right. Now, I understand what you're saying, but it seems like you're looking at it from a specifically naturalistic point of view.
Well,
hold on. Well, you're looking at it empirically, where you're saying, theoretically, if you live in Los Angeles, I don't see God. But by God's very definition, he's immaterial. He would not be a material being within Los Angeles.
So
When I make... Oh, sorry. Can I continue that real quick?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. So when I talk about surveying the possible field of evidence, that's not necessarily, I'm talking about materially within my room, within my city, within my world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking of, and clearly y'all embrace science, I'm speaking of perhaps future, physics discovery, mathematical discovery. For example, in astrophysics, it's become commonplace for most physics today to postulate the early inflationary area of the expansion of the universe after the Big Bang, right? There's absolutely no evidence for that. There's absolutely no evidence for that. But it's absurd to think that absence of evidence means that early inflationary area did not happen.
We're not in the field that you're talking about, but if you were going to claim that scientists have come up with something that they are absolutely certain about and they have no evidence for it, I am going to say you're probably wrong.
Yes, I consider that an extraordinary claim.
Yeah, I think that you're most likely not comprehending science, and either the claims are not as widely universally accepted as you're saying, or the evidence is better than you're leading us to believe.
No, what I just said. No, that's
okay.
If you look more into it, it absolutely is. If you look at from evolution, there's certain time periods when there are no fossils. It's absurd to think that the absence of evidence for those fossils means that there are no fossils.
That's irrelevant. I mean,
I would think it's absolutely relevant.
First of all, if Jen asserts a belief that there is no God, that doesn't mean absolute certainty that there is no God. Am I right?
Right.
I mean, there is no. That's an important thing about science in general, is that there is no generally stated absolute, positive, 100% certainty about it. There's only, let's take all the evidence, weigh it up, and what does it best support? And then they tend to go along with the thing that is best supported. So in the case of, is there God or is there no God? If there's a complete lack of evidence, you're right. That doesn't mean that there is absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, no God. But you can at least say with confidence, if you're a strong atheist, that given what I know now, I have no good reason to believe in God, and therefore I will assume that there is not until new evidence comes up, because otherwise I would be jumping to a positive conclusion without justification.
But you said until new evidence comes up, and you previously said that we do not know about with absolute 100% certainty.
That's
so
correct.
That would imply weak atheism, where
No, it doesn't.
you cannot prove that God does not exist.
Strong atheism is
And you are not certain, but you believe he does not.
Strong atheism does not imply any certainty, okay? And this is something that, I almost never hear this from atheists. It's almost always theists who are going on and on about 100% certainty, okay?
No.
Stop, okay? Doubt is a reality. It's something we have to deal with in life, okay? I'm not uncomfortable with being uncertain about things. I deal with it in my professional life all the time. Uncertainty is fine. And I can still come up with what I believe to be the best answer to a question, even if I have some degree of uncertainty. And that's all I'm doing here. I'm not saying that I'm 100% certain that no God exists. What I'm saying is I believe, based on the evidence I've been presented, that no God exists. And there's a distinct difference between claiming absolute certainty there and saying, based on the evidence I've seen, no God exists.
Okay.
We've only got 5 minutes left in the show.
Can I make one last statement?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and she was saying with the evidence that is given, now, clearly some people find certain evidence as convincing, and it seems as though the evidence that I would find convincing is empirical, that you want. Now, what would you define as evidence?
Well,
I think we've already talked about that.
yeah, we talked about that at the
No, I mean, what would you personally want to see, not the evidence that the biblical assertions are true, that forget about all religion, that the deity